For this PowerPoint, you'll notice that it'll be touching on the benefits of public speaking, the speaking anxiety, listening, and delivery. For this video lecture, I'm going to focus on benefits of public speaking and delivery. You'll also notice that once I go to the delivery portion that I will have longer hair and different set of clothes, and that's just because I edited the video to include an older recording that I did covering that particular section. So whatever I say in that portion of this video is still relevant for this class. Let's first start off with the benefits of public speaking. This class is a required class, so let's be honest, most people, if not all, take this class because they have to, not necessarily because they want to. Public speaking is the #1 feared activity in America, meaning people would rather get shot or die before having to speak in public. And so I understand that there's a lot of anxiety involved with this particular activity. Nevertheless, there's a lot to learn and gain from learning public speaking. So it's a vital life skill, as our book states. There's 3 particular reasons as to why it is beneficial to us. And so first is that it enhances your career as a student. So outside of this class in particular, you probably have done a presentation before, or you will still be doing presentations after this class and in other classes. Hence, then you might as well take a class that literally spends the whole semester talking about public speaking. Don't you find it interesting that other classes require you to know how to speak in public and have basic presentation skills, but then don't actually spend time talking about presentation skills and how you should be delivering your speeches? Whereas in this class, we spend the whole time focusing on just that. And so it enhances your career as a student. Things that you can learn in this class, you can translate in other classes as well. Next is it enhances your career opportunities. So if you think about any higher level jobs that you want to reach or that you want to get to, you'll notice that there's some level of public speaking involved, whether that be in small groups or larger groups. So I've had students before that have already gotten their degree, that is already in a stable job, but they got that promotion and their boss told them, hey, once you get promoted, you're probably going to have to do a little bit of presentations. And so I want you to take this public speaking class so that you get used to doing it. So in the summer and winter, a lot of times I'll have students who are essentially just working professionals who are just taking the class just to practice some public speaking skills. So as we see, even when we're trying to enhance our career opportunities, that you'll probably have to have some level of public speaking skills and competence. Last but not least, and probably the most underrated, is the enhanced opportunities for civic engagement. When we're talking about public speaking, we always have to link it back to democracy. It's inherently linked together. So let's think about back in the day in ancient Athens. They had what's called an aristocracy. Basically, elites and aristocrats ruled the land. So if you're a civilian or a citizen, it doesn't really matter what you think about, laws or anything that they might put in place, because the aristocrats, they're gonna decide for you. Whereas when they started shifting to Athenian democracy, that's when citizens got the opportunity to participate, right? They get to have a voice in what's going to happen in the land. And so they actually had this space called the Agora, where you can say your piece. So like a Agora is like, think of like a 6,000 seater open stadium, kind of like the Coliseum in Gladiator, or like an open seater and at Microsoft Theater or Hollywood Bowl. You can come up to the front and you can say your piece on something. Now, this means that once we saw a democracy, we now saw the beginnings of public speaking and also to persuasion, right? Having to be convincing. Right? Think about how you have to consider things like delivery and content and language to be convincing to someone. And so when we're talking about public speaking, we have to think about the connection back to democracy and choice. So when we are participating in public dialogue, we want to make sure that we're ethical, but also too like effective as well. If we have a good idea about something, or we think that our position is really great and good for society, we have to be able to convince others that it is as well. Like, how great is your idea if you can't convince other people that it's a great idea? And so for this class, I hope that you are going to be able to see these benefits, right, and reap these benefits. Nevertheless, I urge you to start thinking about how public speaking can be a benefit in your life on a practical, but also too on a larger scale level as a citizen. So next, we'll talk about delivery. So first, you should watch this following TED Talk. It's a really quick TED Talk on delivery, essentially. I want you to kind of think about what is the point that he is making in this TED Talk, and how might it relate back to our class and this topic of delivery. So first, I'm going to talk about the types of delivery, aka the book says methods of delivery. Methods of delivery, types of delivery, same thing. But there's 4 different methods of delivery: manuscript style, memory style, impromptu style, and extemporaneous style. Manuscript style is basically the idea that you would have a script and you would be reading off of it verbatim. So for example, political speeches are like that sometimes. So when you notice any State of the Unions by the president, or like a politician, they might be looking at and reading off a teleprompter. So for example, news anchors do this all the time. They're reading off of teleprompter, so they're saying exactly what is written out for them. We're not doing manuscript speeches in our class. Memory style speeches is exactly what it sounds like. It's you are memorizing all parts of your outline and speech. So it's not just the words that are on the speech, but also too how exactly you're going to be saying it. How when are you going to be looking at this side of the room versus the other side of the room. Next is impromptu style speaking. So impromptu style speaking is limited or no prep speech. In our class, we typically have a tendency to do it for practice. Now that we're moving our class online, I'm not sure how exactly we'll be doing that as practice, but we'll see if we can add it into our class for a little bit of extra practice. Now, the type of speech that we're mostly focused on in our class is a extemporaneous style speech. So extemporaneous style speech is a prepared speech. So what that means is you'll typically have a speech outline constructed, and then you're gonna know the speech enough so that you are, or you know all parts of what is on your outline, but then you're not really gonna say the speech exactly how it is written out. Or you can, but the idea is that you are so comfortable with your speech that you are coming off conversational. So for example, you might have a note card, but you're not reading off of the note card, right? You're still looking at the audience or the camera in our situation 80% and above the times. So it's a well-prepared speech where you are speaking in a conversational manner. It's kind of a combination of all 3 of the speeches above. There's a manuscript component in the sense where you are going to be creating a script, an outline. There's a memorize component where you're going to try to memorize as much as possible, right? What is in the outline, what are the key points, the organization that you're using. And then there's an impromptu nature too, meaning you're going to try to memorize as much as you can, but you don't have to say word for word what is on the outline, sentence for sentence what is on the outline. If you change up a sentence or two, that's not that big of a deal, or you might replace a word that you couldn't remember from your outline. But as long as you are giving the same information, that's the idea, and that you're still allowing room for a more conversational style. So you'll notice in a lot of memorized speeches, it comes off very rehearsed and robotic, whereas impromptu speeches allows you to incorporate a more conversational nature, and that's exactly what you want to do for an extemporaneous style speech. So moving on to specifics about speaking components though. Before that, so vocal delivery. Vocal delivery is, there's many different components of it, and it has to do with your voice. So I listed on this PowerPoint slide right here a couple different components that the book also talks about. Now, first starting off with volume, you want to make sure that everyone in the room can hear you. Right? Everyone in the back and to the sides as clear as possible. In the context of our class online, if you're giving an online speech or recorded speech, you just want to make sure that your voice and your message is clear, and you want to make sure that there's no extra noises from outside coming into your audio, right? So you really would want to watch out for if there's construction happening outside, or maybe you have kids, or maybe you have a dog or a cat, right? If they're making any noise. Those are little things to think about. Or maybe you have your notification on your laptop or on your phone. You would want to make sure that you have it on silent so that it doesn't interrupt your speech. Moving on to intonation and inflection. So intonation is the varying of tones in your speech and in your sentence. So when we're excited about something, we sound different than when we're mad about something versus when we're happy about something versus when we're sad about something. We change up the tone. So if you have a more serious speech, then you want to make sure that you sound a little bit more somber and serious. Whereas if you're talking about a more silly speech, then you want to come off a little bit more cheery and upbeat. Now, depending on what you're trying to convey, right, you're going to have to vary your tone accordingly. So what I did in your exercise is that I asked you a question about not only recording yourself, but uploading an example of you saying the phrase ham sandwich in 3 different emotions. So what I want you to do after you watch this presentation is go do your exercise and make sure that you are recording yourself and uploading your yourself saying the words ham sandwich in those 3 different tones. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is inflection. Inflection is when you are stressing a word in a sentence or a sentence in a speech to emphasize the point or to change the message of your sentence. So for example, I'm going to do the following exercise, and I want to make the point about how inflection really changes the way that you're sending a message, meaning the whole meaning of the sentence can change just by which word you choose to emphasize in the sentence or inflect on in the sentence. So let's first start off with the first style. I never said she stole my money. What am I assuming, or what am I implying by saying I never said she stole my money? That means that maybe somebody else said, I never said she stole my money. Then I'm saying that I didn't do it at all. I never said she stole my money. Maybe I asked about it. I never said she stole my money. Maybe I'm talking about somebody else. Maybe I never said she stole, or I never said she stole my money. So maybe I'm implying that she borrowed my money. I never said that she actually stole it. I never said she stole my money. Maybe I'm talking about somebody else's money. I never said she stole my money. So then maybe what I'm stressing is that she stole something else from me. Maybe it's my purse or my phone or my pencil, right? So depending on the word that you are stressing in the same sentence, it can mean a whole completely different thing. And so this is where a lot of miscommunication happens in our everyday conversations. Right? We might think that we're saying one thing, but then somebody might interpret it in a different way just because of how you might have used your inflection choices or you use intonation differently. Moving on to rate. So rate has to do with how fast and how slow you're speaking. You want to make sure that you are speaking in an even keel, but at the same time, you actually want to use rate as a strategy to make your speech interesting. So what you'll notice even in the previous video that I had you watch earlier, the TED Talk, is that he'll change up his rate or his pace of speech. So typically when people are getting to a particular climax, they might speed up just a little bit, and then they might slow down just when they want you to think about what they just said, right? To let it hit a little bit stronger. And so Rate has this cool way of making your speech a little bit more interesting. And so does volume and intonation and inflection. They all actually all come in one. So it's rarely the case that you'll only see one thing happening. You'll usually see a mix of them happening at once. Now, next is vocal fillers and pauses. Vocal fillers are things like like, so. I have a tendency to say right when I'm really rapidly thinking and trying to get my thoughts out. So everyone has their own little tics, and the whole idea of vocal fillers is that you're trying to reduce as many as possible because it doesn't add to the speech or the message that you're trying to send. It's okay if you are using a vocal filler here and there. The whole idea is that you're not using it too frequently. So you don't want to worry too much if you're saying it once in a while, but if you're saying it in after every sentence or in between every word or every other word, that's when you know that it's a problem and we need to reduce it. The whole idea is that instead of using vocal fillers, you want to replace them with pauses. Now, you don't want to have too many frequent pauses because that kills the flow of the speech. You want to make sure that you maintain still some kind of fluidity, but then you don't want to make it too awkward by breaking up your sentences too much by including the pauses. It would be the same as you having the vocal fillers. Now, though, if you have a tendency to speak really fast, like me, then pausing is a good way to catch your breath and make sure that you slow down. Pausing also too helps with emphasizing on a point. For example, all of you are going to have to include what's called a hook or a attention getter in your introduction, the first thing that you say in your speech. When you say your attention getter, you want to pause right after because you want the audience to sit with the attention getter before you go straight into the introduction of the topic and the speech itself. So pauses actually has a method of letting the audience kind of sit through what you just said, right? It has a dramatic effect. So that's another way to use pauses strategically. The next ones that I want to talk about are articulation and pronunciation. So articulation is when you say a word clearly, and pronunciation is saying a word correctly. So for example, with articulation, for those of us who have a tendency to speak really fast, we also have a tendency to mumble. Because we're speaking so fast, we're actually not opening up our mouths enough. Hence, then our tongues get twisted. And next thing you know, you're not articulating. You're not saying the word clearly, right? You're stumbling through your words. And then also then leads to a mispronunciation of a word as well. So that's something to think about for those of you who speak really fast or maybe have a general tendency to mumble. Then articulating, you want to make sure that you're saying your words clearly so that people could follow along with you. Pronunciation is saying your words correctly. Now, this actually influences credibility a lot. So I've had to judge a lot of speeches in my time. And I remember one time as a judge for a speech and debate tournament, I had a student that was doing his speech on Japan, and he was saying the name of the Prime Minister of Japan several times throughout the speech. And something that I noted in the speech was that he kept calling the Prime Minister of Japan Prime Minister Abe, when the general and common pronunciation of the Prime Minister's name is Abe in Western cultures. So something that I noted was, hey, you know, of all the names that you say incorrectly and of all the things that you mispronounce, you probably should pronounce the word or pronounce the name Abe correctly if your speech is about Japan. So again, same thing as I was saying about the vocal fillers. It's okay if you mispronounce here and there. And if it's on like a word that is not too relevant to the topic or it's not pertinent to the topic or very, very important to the topic, then it's fine, you know, as long as people understand what you're saying. But if it's a consistent error that you're making, and also it's a word that you should probably know how to pronounce considering the topic that you're talking about, then for sure you want to double check and make sure that you are pronouncing it correctly. One of the ways that you can actually practice pronunciation and articulation is tongue twisters. So in your own time, you can go in and do any of these tongue twisters so that you can practice articulating and pronouncing your words as best as possible. This is one of the original or oldest ways that we've practiced articulation and pronunciation. So check it out if this is something that you are interested in practicing for yourself. The next thing that I want to talk about is the body, aka non-vocal or non-verbal delivery. So there's several components that I want to discuss, which is facial expressions, eye contact, gestures, posture, and use of space. Now, for facial expressions, it's fairly similar to what I was talking about in terms of intonation. Facial expressions, you want to make sure that it matches up with what you're trying to communicate, right? So when you're in a conversation with someone, if you're upset about something, then you're going to crinkle your face a little bit. You're going to see a little bit of wrinkles on your face to show how upset you are, or you can't help but show it in your face. So same thing when you're up at the front. You want to communicate the tone through your face, right? 60% of a message is nonverbal, and you want to make sure that you're conveying the appropriate facial expression to the tone that you are communicating. So I've had students before that is typically have this tendency to smile all the time, which is a good thing. You know, smiling in a speech makes other people feel very comfortable and shows that you're engaged in the speech. But at the same time, if you're talking about a serious topic, you want to show that you are also serious about the topic. You don't want to be smiling in a topic where you're talking about people dying. Okay? Also, though, there's also students who have this tendency to not show any facial expression or change of facial expression when they're giving their speech. Remember, you don't want to, you want to convey, or you want to convey that you actually care about your speech. Right? If it's just a blank face, it doesn't show that you care. So you want to fluctuate your facial expressions to match up that there's a little bit of care in your topic and the speech that you are giving. Especially if it's like a lighter topic, then you can probably show a smile, right? You can loosen up the face just a little bit more. But if it's a little bit more serious topic, then you want to make sure that you are a little bit more stoic. At the same time, serious topics also can be very like passionate as well, and you want to show passion all the time. So it might be about topics that are directly relevant to a lot of people, or it impacts a lot of people. So for example, if you're talking about topics surrounding like healthcare, or you're talking about topics like Black Lives Matter, those are serious topics, but at the same time, a lot of people are passionate about, and you want to show some oomph when you're speaking, and facial expression has a lot to do with that. Moving on to eye contact. Now, because our class is moving online, you're going to have to start recording and uploading your speeches. What that means is that you're going to have to give direct eye contact to the audience in front of you, which is going to be whoever is watching your speech. So you want to make sure that you are directly looking into the camera instead of somewhere else. Okay. Now, if you are in a physical space or a classroom, then you would want to look at the audience. So that would be different. You want to make sure that you're directly looking at the audience. But in the context of video speeches, what you're going to be doing is directly looking into the camera, because I'm not going to ask you to have a live audience. Hence, then I need you to face the audience, which is going to be whoever is behind the screen. Next is gestures. Now, with gestures, it's hand movements. Now, there's two ways that you can use gestures purposefully. I don't want you to just use hand gestures for the sake of using hand gestures, because hand gestures make a speech a little bit more interesting. But I want you to use it with some kind of purpose. So there's two ways. There's for emphasis and there's for illustration. For emphasis, you might use a hand gesture when you're trying to emphasize on something. So when I'm trying to stress that point, then I might give a particular hand gesture. Whereas if I am trying to illustrate using hand gestures, it's to depict what I'm talking about. So it helps the audience follow along with what I'm saying. So for example, if I'm talking about the steps to something, I might say the first step, the second step, or if I'm talking about the wide hallway, the narrow hallway, the tall man, the short man. So these are all visuals of what you're talking about. Now, with gestures in the context of our videos, what I'm going to be asking you to do, which leads me to actually our next point, is posture. So with posture, you want to make sure that you are standing straight, but in the context of a video, you want to make sure that I can see at least your waist and above, waist and above. So we don't want tight angles, right? We want to make sure that we can not only see your face, but also too that we can see your waist and above as well. So then gestures really count once you're above the waist. But with posture, right, we want to be able to see that your shoulders are relaxed, right? You don't want to be too stiff because this shows anxiety, right, and rigidness. You want to relax the shoulders and seem calm and confident. Now, you want to watch out for like leaning on anything or jutting your hips while you're standing, right? You want to try to be as straight as possible. Which also then leads me to the next one, which is the use of space, so AKA proxemics. Something that I would have taught you as a class, if I was physically in class with you all, is something called the speaker's triangle. And exactly what it sounds like. It is a triangle in the room. So then you would start off from the center of the room, okay? Then you would move to one side of the room. So for example, it might be something like this. Then you would move to the other side of the room, so something like this, and you would come back to the center of the room. Now, because we're going to be uploading our videos, right, we're going to be doing it in an online space, this is not as effective or conducive to use in this setting or this situation. That's something to just think about and take note for yourself on a personal level if you were in a physical space. And if you have any questions about that, obviously you can ask me and I'm more than happy to give you tips on that. But in the context of the types of videos that we're uploading, we're going to be uploading videos. Essentially what you should do is just try to make sure that you're standing in one spot. It might be a little bit too much to try to be moving to different spaces. What you should just watch out for as you are giving your speech is watch out for things like swaying. Okay, so there's some people who have different types of nervous tics, and swaying is a type of nervous tic that some people have. This isn't everyone, but you'll notice when people are doing it. This can be really distracting to some audience members, where then they get really focused on the fact that you're swaying more than anything. And then also too, you want to watch out for pacing, right? This can get really distracting for audience members because it is hard to then follow along sometimes when somebody is moving around a little bit too much. It might feel a little bit chaotic. So ideally for video speeches, you actually want to stay in the same spot as much as possible, because then it helps the audience just follow along with you and follow really mostly what you're talking about more than anything. And then you can use all those other methods like facial expression, eye contact, gestures to make it seem a little bit more interesting. And obviously the vocal variety is one of the ways that you do that most. Okay, so that's it for delivery. And if you have any questions on any of the parts that I talk about in terms of delivery, please let me know. What I try to do with this presentation is actually just talk about how we would implement delivery, considering the fact that you're gonna have to be uploading video speeches and not giving live speeches. And that really kind of changes some of the components and what is the requirements. I will actually update you all on what else you should be aware of for recorded performances, because there's a couple of other things that you should be aware of. And so I'll send more info on that as we get closer and closer to our due date. As of now, really the focus is on just what we're covering this week and some of the things that I'm talking about in this particular presentation. So what you need to do for this week is the quiz and you need to do the exercise. And the exercise does require that you record and upload. So please make sure that you check that out and try to do it sooner than later. If you are running into any technical difficulties while you're doing the recording, then please let me know. If you have an issue with technology or the internet, then please let me know as well. We'll try to see if we can figure something out for you. But other than that, I just really urge that you are checking your messages really frequently. Make sure that you know what the requirements are for the class and what's expected of you every week. Again, I will be every week I will be uploading a PowerPoint, whether that be a video lecture with it or maybe some extra notes on the PowerPoint. That will vary on the week itself. And then there's going to be quizzes and exercises due from now on. Always check the schedule. I updated that on Canvas as well. Check out the updated info sheet. I have a video of it too as well. And so please just check that out and let me know if you have any questions. Right? Thank you.